Hi all, this is Jennifer Spivey, a board member of Atlanta Veg Fest. I'm very excited today to bring you a small chat with JL Fields. JL is the director of the Colorado Springs Vegan Cooking Academy. She's a vegan chef and brand consultant, and she's been a guest of Atlanta Veg Fest 3 times. She's a prolific cookbook author, and her newest cookbook was just released, Baking for Beginners. It was released earlier this month. So far, I've made the brownies, the oatmeal cookies, and the sesame bread, and they've all turned out beautifully. Welcome, JL.
Thanks. It's so good to see your face.
So I wanted to ask you, I was super excited about this interview because you were doing something else prior to 2014. 2014 is when you co-authored your first cookbook with Jenny Messina. What were you doing prior to 2014, and what were the steps you took to transition to be this amazing cookbook author?
I'm not sure if I'm amazing, but I'm definitely good about it. Yeah, so I did one of those things that I think some people at a certain stage of their life do. I think that younger people are doing it more often now, which is sort of really asking themselves, am I doing the thing that I care the most about, that I'm the most passionate about? And the short version is this. I worked in the nonprofit sector and in the higher education sector for years, 25 years. And I had worked at a gay and lesbian organization in Chicago. I worked at a rape crisis center in Chicago. I met my husband there and we moved to New York. And then I ran an international foundation and ultimately started working at was working at the City University of New York at one of the colleges doing fundraising. And during that time, experienced a vegetarian conversion and then a vegan conversion. And when I became vegan, which at that point I was 45 years old, I became obsessed. You know, I started a blog because that's what everyone did back then. I wasn't a YouTuber or anything. I just started this blog because I was like this 45-year-old woman who hadn't been cooking for years because her husband did all the cooking, suddenly vegan. And I totally got into it. And I started going to conferences and taking classes. And I met Jenny Messina, who's the author of Vegan for Life with Jack Norris. I met her at a conference in Portland in, I believe, 2011. 2012, she invited me to co-author the book Vegan for her. And we wrote it that year. And then the year that and that was the year that I just decided to leave my job and see if I could make it as a vegan professional. And I moved to Colorado Springs and started my business in end of 2012. And the book came out in 2013 and it changed everything. That's all I've been doing since.
Wow, that's amazing. So let me ask you a little bit about the Colorado Springs Vegan Cooking Academy, which you started in 2017. Mm-hmm. What was the purpose of starting the Cooking Academy? I mean, that's a big endeavor.
Yeah, and you know, it's a really a big name, and so everyone might in their head might have this like picture of brick and mortar and a great big V out on the outside of a building, and it's not that. So here's the thing: when Vegan for Her was coming out, I was invited to, I'd moved to Colorado and the Veg Fest Colorado invited me to do a cooking demo. And I'd done a few at some farmers markets, but I'd never considered myself really a culinary whiz. I just considered myself a home cook, and I was able to break down some things for other home cooks. And so I did this demo and I just fell in love with it. And so I started doing a lot of cooking demonstrations and I started teaching classes, just nothing like formally, just kind of here and there. I would show up at a Boys and Girls Club or go to a library and teach classes. And along the way, I got another book deal and then another book deal. And I thought, you know, I might be onto something. And I started teaching actually at the University of New Mexico at the Taos campus in Taos, New Mexico. And I started teaching in the culinary program. And I taught for a semester for future chefs, taught them how to cook vegan. And it was then that I was like, you know what, I'm going to formalize this. So I just put together an academy downtown Colorado Springs. I'm the member of a co-working space and I convert the space into a teaching kitchen. And I've been doing that for the last several years.
That's awesome. So 2020 arrives and everything gets shut down, including the Cooking Academy. Mm-hmm. And you immediately pivoted and you started becoming a regular in my Sunday program. You started offering a free cooking classes online with cocktails.
Yes.
and you've developed quite a following. I mean, it's just a really fun time. So can you talk a little bit about that? And now you've done 16 of them. They can't go on forever because, you have work to get back to.
Right.
So what's the future of the cooking classes?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the cooking classes happened, the online cooking classes happened rather accidentally and a little bit selfishly. And what I mean by that is our governor, so I'm in Colorado, and our governor, I believe it was on a Friday, announced the shutdown. And that Saturday, or that the shutdown was going to start on Monday, I think, something like that. And other states were starting to shut down. So on a Saturday, I was just sitting here and I was just like, I love teaching cooking classes, and now I can't teach cooking classes. And I want to be able to do something for people who are stuck at home. So on a Saturday, I put a thing out on my social media outlets, and I just said, if I taught an online cooking class tomorrow on Zoom, would you take my class? It'll be free. And people were like, yes, 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 yes. So I quickly, and I don't know anything about Zoom, I'm like suddenly trying to put together a Zoom class and get the word out. And I did. And the class was vegan pantry basics, because I figured, well, no one's going to the grocery store right now, so everybody's cooking from their freezer or their pantry. And I had 300 people show up. But sadly, because I knew nothing about Zoom, I only had an account large enough for 100 people. So 200 people couldn't get in. And 100 people did, and we had an awesome time. And it was, it fed my soul. I was like, my model with the Colorado Springs Vegan Cooking Academy has been that when I teach classes, I always teach one free class every month and one hands-on cooking class every month, because I'm an activist at heart. The reason I do this work is because I want to change the world for animals, and that I believe in justice for all beings. And that's my work and my activist work. So I teach free classes, and I teach, fee-based classes. So I was thrilled that I got to teach this free class, and I was thrilled that so many people showed up. So then I went on to Facebook and I kind of whined a little bit about it, about, I can't believe 200 people couldn't get in. What am I going to do? And people were like, maybe you should charge. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want to do. Someone's like, maybe you should take tips. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And then an angel in Boulder, Colorado, sent me an email and asked me if I took Venmo or PayPal. And I'm like, yes, and yes. And sent me $1,200 so that I could set up a Zoom account where I could take in more people. And then I was like, she fed my soul. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I committed to 15 more classes. So for I taught 16 classes, took 1 week off. You guys gave me the weekend of 4th of July off. Oh, and then another weekend off when I was driving. No, that's not true. I drove to Illinois and still taught a class from my sister's kitchen. And so, so I did that, and it was free. And then I did start dropping a link for tips. People were generous, and it, paid for my time, for my ingredients, for the marketing that I was doing to let people know I had free classes. And so now what I'm doing is I'm teaching 2 classes a month, and I've started a sliding scale model. So if people need and want to take a free vegan cooking class, it's $0. If people want to pay $10, it's $10. I just had 2 people today register. I have an angel in Colorado Springs who she was paying $100 every week, and another one just did the same thing. So it's going to work. You know what I mean? Like, the community is coming together so that those who can will, and those who can't will get to learn how to cook vegan food. So it's like everything that my personal and professional vision and mission has ever been is just continuing in the format of a Zoom window.
That's amazing. So you mentioned your activism, and of course it's always for the animals. Yeah, cheers. It's always for the animals. However, you became known for something else.
Yes.
And that is that you, is that Henry?
That's my dog, Harry. Sorry.
Harry. Yeah, Harry. You're quick to shut down body shamers.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not one to offer nutritional advice, and you tend to shut down people very quickly when they're offering kind of pseudoscience in one of your classes or your chats.
Yeah.
Even though you and Dave, your husband, are quite active and health conscious people.
Yes.
Can you explain why that's so important to you?
Yeah, and I love that question, and I love how you asked that, Jen. I appreciate the respect of that question. So, where do I start? Let's just do let's do a medium version. So I have been a variety of sizes as a vegan. And spoiler alert, I was a variety of sizes before I was a vegan. So I have always had issues with people feeling the need to sell veganism as a cure-all, as a magic bullet. as a guarantee of being healthy for life, that you're going to look 30 when you're 70, that you will be skinny. So that may or may not be true, although we're all going to die. So y'all just need to live with that. And there's nothing wrong. I'm 55 this year. I freaking look 55, and that doesn't make me any less of a vegan. And so I have a problem with this belief that we need to sell veganism when there's nothing to sell, when at the core, it simply means justice. And it means not harming or using anyone, any being, when it's unnecessary. And so I believe that I know that lots of people use that method and that it works, and that many people are attracted to it for that reason. I don't know how many of those people will stay if they don't get their promise fulfilled. So if someone was told you'll be skinny when you go vegan and then they're not, does that mean that animals will be continued to be consumed because someone is still, a size 20 instead of a size 8? And so, so I don't want to do that. And so I want to be open and invite everybody. And I know that sometimes it ticks the health people off, in my classes. And by the way, when I say health people, I'm like, you all see what I eat. I've been cooking for you on Sundays. And like, I eat what most people eat, which is, you eat food. And then occasionally you want the frickin' French fries with vegan queso and green chili that I'm going to go get in about an hour when you and I are done. And so I just want to demystify it, to welcome people in. And some people feel like that so that I've done the opposite, and that I am not inviting people, like who are more health motivated. And I just disagree with that. That's not true. Anybody who has any of my books has seen that I offer options and do my best to respond to people who are choosing a variety of ways to eat. But, I was actually doing an interview a couple of days ago, non-vegan at all. This was like a local Colorado Springs business person who was interviewing me. And for the first time, I felt like I was really conceptualize what I think about this, which is that no matter how you identify, if you're eating vegan or plant-based, there are 5 foods in our food groups. They're vegetables, they're fruits, they're legumes and beans, nuts and seeds, and grains, period. Anything else out here is a diet. And you're going to make a choice. Am I going to have a diet in which I have frozen vegan pizza? Cool. That was a dietary choice. Am I going to go over here and not eat any salt, oil, sugar, nuts, or anything? That's a diet choice. This doesn't change. This is eating vegan and this is eating plant-based. Why don't we tell everyone that and invite them in and not scare them away? And then they can make their own personal dietary choices.
Absolutely. Yay. So moving away from that, let's talk a little bit about vegan baking for beginners, brownies and such. This was released later this month, and I'm happy to say that even though I pre-ordered it, I had to wait an extra 2 or 3 weeks to get it because Amazon sold out of the first run, which is amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what's your favorite, if you can say, like they might be like your children or whatever, but your favorite recipe in the book, and what trick did you learn while you were researching this book? Because I know before this book, you weren't a big baker.
Correct. Yeah, that is such a great question. I actually do have some favorites. And I think the segue was genius, Jen, because when someone asked me about that, they're like, oh, it's so cool. You have this book, Vegan Baking for Beginners, and how great for people who want to eat healthy. I'm like, oh, no. There's no cholesterol. But no. So I pulled this out because I'm actually going to show you a couple of the recipes that I absolutely love. So I started accidentally baking about 3 years ago when I accidentally found that somehow I had purchased a sourdough starter. I think when I bought some a yogurt culture from Cultures for Health, I think maybe they threw in a free sourdough starter, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. So I think I threw it in the freezer. And then one March, I think it was like a snowy, rainy day here in Colorado. And, I do what one does. And I was like, I shall organize my freezer today. And so I'm like organizing my freezer, and I find the sourdough starter. And I was like, And I started feeding it and Googling things and YouTubing. And I fed a sourdough starter. And I've had it. She's alive. Her name is Sandy. She's been around for 3 years, and she's delightful. But I got a spoiler alert, no sourdough in my book because it's Vegan Baking for Beginners. And my publisher was like, no. But anyway, so that was really my baking at that point. And so there was no real science for me to it other than what I had Googled to learn how to do. But then I've been working with the same publisher for the last couple of books. And they were like, we've been watching you on Instagram and we see that you bake-ish. And we want to invite people who feel the same. So what do you think about like creating this book while you're learning it and doing it? And I was like, I'm 100% in. So I learned a lot. One of the reasons I didn't bake that much was because there's so much chemistry and science behind it. And I'm like an English major person. Math gives me, I break out in hives. And so it was just really fun to just really break it down to the basics. So this book is designed actually for two different audiences. It's either designed for people who are not vegan whatsoever and they think they can't bake because eggs, butter, milk, and it's also designed for people who've been vegan for years and years and was like, I could never bake. So it's super stripped down, not terribly fancy, and which is basically my style in general anyway. So a couple of my favorites one is on the cover of the book. So I was like, please let me do savory as well, because I am just like a savory girl. Umami is my middle name. And so this recipe on the front was one of the first tarts I'd ever made. So the crust was super exciting, but this is a caramelized onion and mushroom tart. And it just melts in your mouth. It's the thing that for those of you who are vegan and you have people in your family who aren't vegan and you want to, you kind of want to bring them over to the other side, but you don't want to give them the Beyond Burger or Impossible Burger, but you want them to see just like how tasty and wonderful something is. And you don't really look at it and go, oh, that's vegan, or that's the vegan version. It's just good. So I love that. And then the other savory one that I really am excited about is I did with my pie crust. I add turmeric and made a turmeric pie crust and then made a chickpea pot pie with it. So I super loved that. And I can't remember if you were on my class in Illinois. I was at my sister's house, and so I made my grandma's date pudding, and it's really cake actually, and it's just simple. You saw how simple it was, but there's just something about the hominess of it, and what it just reminds me of all of our Sunday dinners and our Christmases, when that was just what grandma brought, this big long cake pan with whipped topping on it, and there's just some simplicity to it so it kind of stays as one of my favorites.
I was in that class and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed seeing your family members get involved, and it was fun. Yeah. So I just want to touch base on your other classes, which, by the way, if you're tuning in, are all available for free online, except one. And I was worried I would do that today, but luckily I think I've done it correctly. Your umami class, you are a big proponent or a big teacher of umami. Mm-hmm. And that umami class taught me things that I wouldn't even think to put together. So of all your 16 classes, do you have one that stands out other than Dave making pizza? Of course, that was
a great one. My husband Dave jumped in on, he ended up joining 3. And then one thing, just in case it's confusing, when you said all the 16 classes, all but one, and then free. They were all free, and you can still watch all the videos. I just screwed up and didn't record one. I didn't record Instant Pot, but you can go back. They're on my website, jlgoesvegan.com classes, and the 15 that I actually got it together and hit record are all there for you to enjoy. And so, I think, you know how I feel about umami. I mean, I love it so much. I had it tattooed on my arm. I'm like, umami, if people who are listening or watching don't know what umami is, it's considered the 5th flavor. It sort of came out of Japanese culinary world, and it's this idea of, we have sweet and sour, bitter, and I always forget one. Sweet, sour, salty. And umami is considered sort of this 5th flavor that has this essence of meatiness, but it doesn't require meat. And it can also give you a sense of satiety. And so there are ingredients and cooking methods. And I won't bore you now, just go to the jlgoesvegan.com/classes and scroll down and just watch the umami one. But I love talking about it because I think that people don't think they're good cooks. And I think that there probably are some people who are not that great of cooks, but it's because somebody hasn't sat down to talk with them a little bit and just talk about flavors and how to, bring out sort of this, essence or aroma out of a food. And I think when you start to think about adding something like umami, it starts to help you think about how you cook in general, like how you're motivated by smell. When you smell something when you start a saute and someone will walk in and go, oh my God, that smells amazing. And you're like, dude, it's garlic and olive oil right now. There's nothing else. Yeah, but it smells amazing. And then all of a sudden your senses come alive and your creativity comes alive. Like, I wonder if that fresh green that I just pulled out of the garden would be amazing in this right now. So I think I'm partial to the vegan umami class. I really, really enjoyed that. But I will tell you that the one that I really loved for a variety of reasons was the vegan eggs and dairy, because it happened shortly after George Floyd was murdered, and after people really took to the streets to demand justice and to insist that no lives matter until Black Lives Matter. And I really felt a sense of responsibility and a desire to do what I could with the platform that I have. And there is an incredible baker here in Colorado Springs, Patrice Evans, who's been making incredible vegan goodies for years. She comes to all of she sells at my vegan markets. I host vegan markets here in town. I used to host vegan markets here in town. And so I turned to, I was completely transparent. I'm like, listen, I have a platform. People are coming to my class every week. I want you to, Patrice is Black. If you haven't figured out, I guess I probably should have made that point. A Black vegan chef or a pastry chef here in town. And I was like, I want you to be there because you bake. I'm a home baker. And I want you to pick an organization that you would like to, that we can take any tips that we get and work towards Black Lives Matter. And so I was really proud of that class because it was an informative class. It was a fun class. I think people learned a lot about how to use vegan eggs and dairy, and we were able to be transparent about how we were feeling about what was happening in the world. So that's probably one of my favorite classes.
Awesome. So you mentioned umami. You have done, I think you have released 7 cookbooks. Is that right? Yes. 7 cookbooks. And I know you just finished an 8th, and maybe you can't divulge a lot of information about that. But while we wrap up here, can you just kind of mention what's next?
Sure. So my 8th book is coming out. I co-authored 2 books out of these 7, and one was the Main Street Vegan Academy with Victoria Moran, and then of course Vegan for Life with Jenny, and then I wrote 4. And so my 8th book is coming out in the fall, and it's the theme is plant-based, which is going to make some people fall out flat, especially after our body image discussion. But you know why? Because I wanted to take that on, because plant-based doesn't mean restricted diets. Plant-based means plants. And so I'm really excited about that book, and that'll be out in the fall, more details coming. And I've started the new series of classes. So I spend a lot of time health coaching now. And then my cooking classes for right now will remain online because it's working. And truthfully, you know, I'm just a firm believer in what happens is what's happening, and you have a choice. You can either like sit down and weep, and say it's all over, or you can say, well, this is what I got, so what am I going to do? So for years and years and years, I had people not in Colorado Springs saying, it kills me every time you post one of your classes you're teaching in Colorado Springs. I can't take your classes. Why don't you teach online? I'm like, I can't. I don't have a camera. I don't have a fancy kitchen. I'm not trained in that way. Can't. And then suddenly I needed to. And then the gift that I was given was realizing that my folks from Colorado Springs have been taking these classes right along with you in Georgia every Sunday. And so the universe gave me an opportunity to do what I love and what I'm passionate about and reach a lot more people. And so for right now, I'm actually just going to stick with that.
JL, with that wisdom, we'll call it to a close, but I am so excited to see what you do next. You've been an inspiration to me, as I know our little Sunday club, our little Sunday cocktail and cooking club. And I want to thank you so much. And I hope to see you a 4th time at Veg Fest, Atlanta Veg Fest, when we're able to pick that up again. So
one of the best Veg Fests in the country. I don't say that lightly. I've done many. You guys are incredible, and what you do in your community is amazing. So, you know, from your lips to wherever, I hope I see you all in Atlanta very soon.
Thanks, JL. So there you go, y'all. JL Fields. Please check her out. Check out her website. Look at her classes, and perhaps sign up for some of the Sunday classes that will come in the future. This is Jennifer Spivey. Thanks. Bye.